Here we are talking about, oh, this is you. This is how you're designed. This is your blueprint. This is it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know people, myself included, you have these moments of like, I think at first, especially with people's types, they don't always resonate with
Mm-hmm.
what it says your type is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought we'd talk about that. Human design reveals who you are energetically and who you came here to be. I'm Dana, human design specialist.
And I'm Haley, the human design newbie. Listen in as we explore how leaning into your authentic self is your ultimate path to success. Welcome to the Human Design Hive podcast. Let's get into it.
Hello, Haley. How are you today?
Hello. I'm
Hello.
excited.
Oh, why are you excited?
Because I get to see you tomorrow.
Oh, I know. Right before we started to record, I was like turning all the lights on in this room, even though it's like 4:00 in the afternoon.
But it's rainy.
Because it's raining again. I said to myself, we live in one of the sunniest states in the country.
Yeah.
In the last 3 weeks we recorded together, it's been raining. And just this little window of time too. It was sunny earlier.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know why that is, but it is ironic. But yes, I get to see you tomorrow.
Even though I just saw you.
I know it's not enough, but we have to store up our visits since you're now officially got a time and that you're moving to Colorado and you have a place to go in Colorado and it's official at the end of March. We'll be going out to Colorado. Maybe though, on the way out there, that's when we'll start our travel podcast because I'm driving with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Me, Haley, and Bailey the dog in a Honda Civic.
And my plants.
Oh, where are they going?
In the back seat with Bailey.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, they're half dead anyhow.
Stop. I'm trying really hard on the silver leaf. It has like 4 Silver Queen.
You don't even know her name.
She's a queen, okay? She's a queen.
She's a queen.
But it's got 4 like stalks, I guess. There's like main branch. 2 of them are just nubs. They've lost all their leaves.
Oh. Well, I don't know. I mean, the only thing I can tell you is it's not the growing time of year, so that's something in your favor. So maybe it'll get better.
Maybe.
Well, we're not going to give up on it.
No. The one stalk, one pillar, it's going strong. It's the best one. So,
well, I had that one outside that looked near dead and just left it outside for 5 months, and then it was fine again. So nature.
Yeah.
Nature has its way.
Crazy.
So, yes. So you will be officially out in mountain time by April, which will make our recording even more challenging, but we will manage. We'll get something done.
Yeah.
I'll still be here every week.
Yeah. I will be here, but it kind of hit us, the time difference earlier today because it was like 10 o'clock here. And we were calling the apartment complex to ask them a question. And it's like, leave your name and number and we'll get back to you during normal business hours. And we both looked at each other. We're like, what are normal business hours? And then we're like, oh, wait, they're not open yet.
Oh, yeah. It's early there. They're still at home having their morning coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be different for sure. But, we'll adapt. We'll figure it out. So anyways, and it's funny that we're recording right now, even though you're going to be here tomorrow in person, but the setup for recording in person is questionable. Podcasting equipment that you did have for that is packed away somewhere. So I think we can do it though. Bring your microphone and we'll just be at opposite ends of the house.
I was going to ask you.
Stick you in your brother's room and I'll be in my room. It'll be fine. All right. Well,
okay. What do you have for me today?
Well, yes, you have no idea what we're going to talk about today. So
never.
I thought it'd be fun to talk. Well, fun or interesting, or hopefully helpful to those of you out there. The question that gets posed a lot, or I think about a lot, or I've heard from people in some context is, what if you don't resonate with your design? Or why don't you resonate with your design? Here we are talking about, oh, this is you. This is how you're designed. This is your blueprint. This is it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know people, myself included, you have these moments of like, I think at first, especially with people's types, they don't always resonate with what it says your type is. And so I thought we'd talk about that a little bit. And then if that's the case, where it might be coming from, but also things to consider, to play around with, to maybe help it to resonate more with you, I guess. So,
yeah. I mean, I see it in my, not in my chart or my design overall, but just like in some of my certain gates. I'm like, oh, it doesn't sound like me. But I didn't think of people just like completely not resonating with their charts.
Yeah. I have heard some people just outright be like, no, that doesn't sound like me at all. I have seen that before. Nobody I've ever done a reading for, but I have seen that in groups I'm in and messages, stuff like that. And I think I briefly mentioned here before that there was about a year or so ago, a lot of talk about how the chart is calculated. And there was this big uproar over the type of astrology that's used, because there's all different kinds of astrology.
We did talk about this.
Yeah. And this one was about sidereal, which looks like it's spelled like sidereal, but it's sidereal astrology. Okay. And it's based more on a actual position of the planets if you looked up in the sky or something like that. I mean, like I'm not the astrologer. So, and if you run your chart, and even in some of the chart generating software out there, not mine, but not like mine, like I own it, but the one that's on my website, you can look these things up, like Vedic astrology and sidereal, because you could be a generator, say, in the Western astrology model, which is the standard. And then Vedic astrology, or not Vedic, sidereal astrology might say that you're actually a projector, because it's actually putting the planets in different positions in the sky and all such stuff. So there was a lot of talk then about people saying, oh, well, I resonate so much more with that calculation. And it's like, well, okay, fine. It's not, nobody's going to argue with you, although there was some arguing back and forth about what was real. And my thought on that, and what I heard, and what my, one of my teachers would say to me, is that the voice gave Ra the instructions, and it was based on Western astrology, on that model. So that's what I go with. I'm not going to worry about it too much. But that brings the first point about, well, what if your chart doesn't resonate, or elements of your chart doesn't resonate? First thing you want to do is make sure that the birth information is correct. Because it's an often overlooked thing. You might turn yourself inside out, and then you might look at, because I'll tell you my story about that. But first of all, make sure that where you get your information from is as accurate as best to your knowledge. Now, I had my birth certificate. It was a handwritten one. It was an old copy of a handwritten one. And the first time I ran my chart, I had the right time, but I put the wrong time of day, like morning to night. So I had run my chart as 6:06 a.m. and that made me a 4/6 emotional generator, which I'm not. There wasn't too much change there. It was relative. The thing that might change most likely in the 12-hour span could possibly be a moon gate. That's about it. Although sometimes the sun does well. In my case, I shouldn't say that, because in my case, it did change quite a bit, because
you're completely different
profile. Yeah. So when I looked closely at it again, because it didn't spell it out in military time, it just said 6:06, and it had two little places where the doctor could circle AM or PM, and I misread it, and it was circled PM, and I had put in AM, which personally I was like, well, I'm so glad I wasn't born at 6 in the morning, because it just doesn't resonate with me.
You're like, I am not getting up that early.
But then, yeah, so that did change my profile to a 4/1. And so it's different than a 4/6 for sure. But there's a lot of elements that are the same, but there is a difference. So it wouldn't cause me to not completely resonate with the rest of my chart, but you do want to make sure that you have the correct information. And even if you have the correct information, you want to make sure when you generate the chart that you double check the information there, that it's showing you that it is the correct time, date, and place. Because sometimes, there can be states or cities that are in multiple, the same name place in different states or even countries or whatever. So just double check that. That's one place to look. So, and that brings up another point about time and all this other stuff. And because a lot of people also are concerned if they don't have their exact birth time is just, and I don't know if this falls into the same category, but in that instance, if you don't have an actual time, ask as many people as you know in your family first, if anybody can remember day or night.
It's worked really great trying to figure out daddies.
Yeah, we're of a consensus now. And then if you have access to computer generated chart system that can easily check the time for you, not check the time, but run a chart for you. I usually start around, if somebody doesn't know, I usually start around 6 or 8 a.m. And then I'll run a chart again for like 10 to 12 hours later. See if there's major differences like in profile or type or things like that. And so if it's right away, like a different profile or different type, energy type, that could be quite a problem, because then you would have to probably get more details from somebody about how they are and what they are to help you narrow it down to see if the design is actually a generator or a projector, but it can get tricky. But there are other options. And then I usually run like every 2 hours to see if I can narrow it down more. If things keep not changing, then it's really not that important, the exact time. But like, in my case, it could be that if you run a chart and it switches profiles throughout the day, you do need to dial it down. And there are ways to do that. There's rectification charts. It's astrology. There's people that do that, chart rectification, they call it. It's a hard word to say. I want to hear you say it, Haley.
Rectification.
Good job. Oh, now that you heard me say it twice. I bet you if I showed you the word, you tried to say it. Wouldn't be as easy. Sorry.
Probably not.
Sorry. But anyway, so there are ways. If you don't know your exact birth time and you're having problems with it, you can always reach out to me and ask me some of the other ways to go about narrowing that down. But okay, so make sure your time is right, first of all, that your chart information is right.
Got the right information.
Yes. So, okay, so everything's right. And you find out that, your type and it doesn't land with you right away. And I think this is quite common for a lot of people when they first hear it. Myself included, like I said, I mean, my chart didn't change from being a generator. Like I was still emotional generator. But I've shared a little bit before that when you first see the traditional languaging of it, it doesn't feel very empowering for most people. I think if you were just especially several years ago when there wasn't as much information out there. And my biggest issue with it, I guess, where it didn't right away land, I mean, I figured it was kind of true, but I didn't feel, everybody talks about the immense energy of the generators. They have so much energy and they love to work. And I thought, that's crazy.
You're like, absolutely not.
I just waking up every day, just dying to work. I was like, no.
Negatory.
No, I do not. That's not true. Like, you're the workers and the builders. And I felt so insignificant, honestly, because it's like you feel like you're just one of so many billions, right? You're just like, oh, I'm just one of the worker ants, and it just kind of felt. So really a lot of that there was just my initial like ego reaction to it of like, but I'm more special than that.
And then you learn the authority. And you're like, what?
What?
Or no, the strategy. Mm-hmm. You learn the strategy and you're like, I gotta wait? What do you mean?
Mm-hmm. Truthfully, yes, true. And that ties into what we're going to say here about why it doesn't resonate with you. Because if you are, let's just start with, obviously, because I'm talking about the generator types, that the whole waiting to respond thing is hard because we do, I think of myself, have this feeling that we should be doing something, you know, and of course we're told we should always be working or doing something by society, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if this is true for all generators, but like for myself, I always felt like I should be doing something. Could be my open route too, which I didn't know about either. That's mm-hmm. was pressuring me all the time to feel like I should be doing, but mm-hmm. I didn't want to be doing. I want to just sit around and learn things and, you know, read and, you mm-hmm. know, daydream. And but the point being, in this case for a generator, my initial reaction to not resonating, and for a lot of people, a lot of generator types, of this whole work thing is we're not doing work that's correct for us. We're mm-hmm. not, most importantly, probably not built a life honoring our sacral response. Mm-hmm. And especially you get to, as in my case, learning this in my late 40s, early 50s, I had built a life that was not consciously knowing that inborn. I mean, you follow your instincts on a lot of things mm-hmm. sometimes, but there was also a lot of the, well, I don't really want to do this, but it's not a big mm-hmm. deal. I can get it done fast, or I can do it. It's only going to take so much time. And then suddenly it's like years later and you're like, what have I been doing? I said I would just, you know, help out a little bit at a job. And here I have been for 5 years. I'm just saying, I heard. Yeah, that's my experience. So, okay. So generators might not right away resonate because of really the way it's framed, and maybe an incorrect use of their energy. Mm-hmm. Same with projectors, you know. Mm-hmm. A lot of projectors are not thrilled when they first hear it. Now, they might resonate, though. I mean, when you tell me your experience of me saying you're a projector, and this is what about projectors, what was your first? If you can remember.
I definitely think I could resonate with like the energy level part of it, because mm-hmm. like I know when I've hit a wall and I'm like, no, I'm tired. I'm not going to do anything else. So I resonated with that. Mm-hmm. But then the whole like having to wait for the invitation and that's when I was like, I don't like that.
Mm-hmm. And why didn't you? What had you been doing, or what did you feel that you were compelled to do in order to, you know, exist? When you say you didn't like the invitation part, why was that?
Because it made me feel like I had to basically like wait on everything. Because like just being first told about it, it wasn't like, oh no, it's just for the big things. It's like you have to mm-hmm. wait for the invitation. It's like, well, I have to wait for everything, or like what? Because I don't want to have to be waiting on other people.
Because you know what to do. Uh-huh. And I think that happens to a lot of projectors. I think there is, like you said, that relief of like, oh, I'm not, you know, crazy or lazy or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, oh, I don't think I want to be a projector. I've heard that sometimes too. I mean, especially, you know, ones that, so projectors not having that defined sacral, they mm-hmm. can be the very energetic types actually, or appear that way, especially right. as yourself, a younger person who hasn't been doing it for 3 decades and is mm-hmm. burnt out. But you know, these a lot of times, because I'll be honest, you know, our culture is this American culture, the work and hustle culture.
Yeah.
And getting ahead and just pushing through, no pain, no gain, right? So if you're a projector, your inclination was probably more likely to want to you maybe have felt, tell me if I'm wrong, that you needed to just push through your tiredness or your exhaustion because other people did, or did you feel, I mean, did you ever have that feeling?
Not like any specific example that I can think of, but I'm sure most of like high school and college, like I wouldn't want to do my assignments or whatever because I was tired and I didn't want to have to do that. And then I would be like in clubs or in sports. And then it was like, well, I just got to get this done. And then, of course, my own pressure on myself to get good grades.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then I was like, well, I have to do my assignments.
Yeah. It's funny because you said in high school or college when I didn't want to do my assignments because you're tired, I'm thinking I just didn't want to do them. I was like, this is stupid.
Well, yeah, it usually was me saying, this is stupid. I don't want to do this. I'm tired.
Yeah, I wasn't tired. I was just like so uninterested. I literally could not make myself do it. But if I was interested, I could get it done. But for the most part, I was just like, forget it. Such a great example. I can say that now that you are graduated. So yeah, so that could definitely turn off a projector type too. I have seen that in some, like I said, there may be the relief there of like, oh, okay, this lack of energy at times is normal. But then I think at times, like you said, how it's been framed that you have to wait and you have no energy. Like that's the message that gets drilled in at first. And it's such a misrepresentation of the projector's skills and purpose. And so there is the projector type could have just this, again, it could be like an ego reaction almost like I had with the generator thing. Is like, I just don't want to hear that, because that's not how I've been living my life, and so you don't want to be told that you've been doing it wrong.
No one does.
That's how it feels. I mean, that's how it feels. But then when you give yourself enough time to, if you get curious enough and look at it, you can be like, oh, well, I can see now where this was actually working. Like you said, you didn't want to wait around for things. But then as we kind of dug in a little bit and you and I talked about it, and you could see where some of your best experiences you had were things that you were invited into. And it wasn't that you waited around for them. You were still doing your thing and you were just doing what you wanted to be doing. And then people recognized you and saw that. So yeah. Totally. So yeah, if you're, I don't know, honestly, it's funny when I was thinking about, when they're first told like a manifestor, I was like, I know a few manifestors personally. They don't seem too surprised or too upset. They're manifestors.
Yeah. Well, they're the ones that said you can start things. You don't have to. You only have to wait on yourself.
Yeah. They're like, yeah, that checks out. I understand that. Yeah, that's me. And now this brings up an interesting point though about the manifestors, because it's not to say that there aren't manifestors out there that don't get it at first or don't feel it at first, because this really is going to play into all the types, is this conditioning part, right? Which is another big overarching thing of why you may not resonate with your initial look at your chart and your type and all this other stuff. Because it came to my mind, like there are manifestors that have felt rather powerless or not, because I think we see manifestors as these powerful forces, because they are kind of self-contained. Their aura is just kind of like, get out of my way. I've got things to do. And the ones that I know personally, a friend of mine, she's done a lot of work on herself and she's uncovered a lot of things. And so when we got with her to human design, it was a relief also for her, because it did resonate. She understood it. But if I had gotten her at another point in her life, she may not have. And there are people who have been so, especially if they're women, a lot of women who are manifestors may be feeling or have grown up feeling really not powerful, because they probably got shut down a lot. And being women to begin with, we're taught to be a certain way. But then I think as women, we can also be driven more by our relationships and how we fit into the group and to everything else and all that. And if everybody around us is not like that, and we have been told to not be so independent on our own, do what we should do, especially younger kids when if they're manifestors and get that urge to do things, and they got shut down a lot. They probably were told quite a bit that you're too much.
Don't do that right now. Not right now.
Yeah. And so at first you might have someone that to tell them that they are this, force of energy that is here to get the ball rolling and initiate things, but they've never really had the opportunity to do it. And if they get, again, curious, take some time to kind of take all this in and then reflect on their lives and be like, they kind of know that it was there within them. It just quite often was not appreciated. And that could be one example of that, of not really resonating at first because they just don't see their own power yet, or they haven't had the opportunity. So that being said, for all the types, which is all of us, if we have not been using our strategy correctly, like you said, things might not resonate because we're just and it's an interesting topic, because when I say using your strategy correctly, it doesn't mean you were never doing it. Like I said, if I look back on my life as a generator, once I got over myself of like, I don't want to be a worker, I just want to be the mastermind or whatever. I would see that, this response to life thing, I could see it so much clearer after a while that that's what had brought me a lot of my most enjoyable or successful things, was just responding to what showed up in front of me, Right. I mean, like I said, when I met your dad, or the first time I saw your dad, not even when I met him, I mean, that was really a use of strategy, because I had been in my own mind contemplating the relationship I was in and knowing it didn't quite feel right, but I didn't, he's
I'll
a nice
just see
guy.
it through.
Yeah, he's okay. He's not bad. He's good looking. Yeah, but he wore those shoes.
What?
He wore those shoes with acid wash jeans. What the hell is that? I am not an acid wash jeans kind of girl. But that time, the first time I saw your dad, that was sacral response. Was like literally that was like, oh, he showed up in my outer environment. And because I entered into it correctly, because I'm emotional authority, didn't meet him that first time. Several times, every time I'd see him at the same club or whatever, it was always the same response. Was like, yep.
Was there one bar in Myrtle Beach at the time?
There was one that I went to because I was 19 years old and I could get into that one. It was a small hole in the wall, but they just had live bands there, and we liked to go see. There wasn't many, we were more of a alternative crowd there. God, 1990.
What was the waiting period?
For when I actually met him? It was a good, I want to say it was about 3 or 4 weeks, because we would only go there on the weekends. And so I had been thinking about breaking up with my boyfriend. Something in my outer environment showed up. I responded to, yes, broke up with my boyfriend.
Did you break up with him that night?
I did. I wrote in the car on the way home.
Hey, I need you to drop me off, but we're done.
No, actually, you're my daughter. Actually, he was in the Army, and he was at Fort Bragg, which is about 2 hours away, and he was staying at our place. So I even broke up with him, and he had to go home. It's like, this ain't working. He was. Does that make you?
That's so rough.
You what?
I said that's so rough.
I was nice as I could be about it. I felt really bad, but I'm the kind of person that
just waited till he left that weekend.
No, it was going to be there for like another day or two. I couldn't do that. I knew it was over.
You're like,
done.
You got to get out right now.
I didn't throw it out, but he kind of wanted to leave.
Maybe in lesser terms.
Yeah. But we're getting off track here. But it was like, we would go down there for every weekend, and then I would see your dad with his friends. I didn't meet him, the story. And then right, I want to say it felt like 3 or 4 weeks before I got up the nerve to talk to him. rest is history. And it's right.
Sweet.
History is right in front of me. I see your smiling face. So anyways, how do we get there? Strategy. Responding. So even though I wasn't aware I was using my strategy as a generator, it was working through me anyhow. And so if somebody finds that out about themselves and it doesn't resonate, if you really do some reflective work, you can see that. I mean, think about the times in your life where things just magically showed up in your life that seemed to work out at the right place, the right time, things you used to call coincidence. And maybe if you can remember, track back and say, was this something? Because I think a lot of times it was like, how I see it, the things that showed up in my life were things I had been thinking about. And then I knew it was the right time when it was like like Susan moving in across the street from us when you were a baby. And, she was the person who ended up showing me how to make jewelry just from a conversation. We had, things. And when I, like my initial yoga teacher and just, so many little things along the way that you could never see coming. And that's what, a generator's not supposed to figure it out and know what's coming. They're just supposed to keep responding to things. And so that's something to contemplate is, do I not resonate with it? Or am I just not looking at the whole picture and dig a little bit deeper and see, check out what the strategy is for your type. Maybe you have been doing it. And
you just don't realize it.
Yeah. And see if that helps you take some of those walls of resistance down of like, this isn't me. Probably is. So that brings me to the next point about your authority. Your own authority. Because that's another way, because that's your decision-making process that is unique to you. And if you've not been making decisions correctly, which most of us are not, we're all making them with our heads, which nobody has a head authority. There may be what they call a mental projector, but even the mental projector is not supposed to just like figure it out in their head. They're supposed to talk about it.
Doesn't work out that way.
Yep. Get it out of their head. Hear what they're saying. So they know if it sounds sound or not. But so, okay. So a lot of people don't want to hear, especially emotional authorities, don't want to hear that they have to wait. Another waiting. So I had to wait to respond and then I had to wait again.
Yeah. The authority for me is definitely the one that like is kind of the like loosest to me, just kind of like I don't quite grasp it. Like I can see the emotional authority, like I understand that one, but I'd like, because mine is splenic, so I'm like, well, what exactly does that mean?
Well, I think for a projector, it just splenic authority helps you more in the moment of making decisions of what feels right for you. And I mean, it's not so much like from what I understand, a gut response, like a sacral response. And when I say gut, I mean like I physically can feel it. Splenic, from what I understand, I mean, because I have a defined spleen as well, is just kind of a knowingness, and it's in the moment, and it can change from moment to moment. Because like somebody might ask you, if you want to go to dinner tonight, and you'd be like, yeah, but then by the time it's time to come to dinner, you might be like, no.
That I can see the most in my life is I'll agree to something and then it'll get closer. I'm like, I really don't want to do that anymore. And then I still do it because I committed to it. And it usually ends up fine because it's like, I mean, it's like most of the time it was like going out with friends or something like that. So it was like, it always was fine, but it was like, that's definitely where I can see it the most.
Yeah. But, you might get those times where, or you go, but it's just not the right place or it doesn't feel right. It's just kind of a feeling, but it's really, if you think about it, because you have that, but you're also very open in a lot of your other centers. So there's still going to be a large amount of your authority, even though you have the splenic authority to help guide you in smaller things like that, moment to moment things. Bigger things, you're probably still going to need to like talk it out more and, see how it feels each time, you talk about it, or when it comes down to it, how you feel about it. But I guess we're going to do another authority podcast, another authority episode, which I thought about doing more specific on each authority. So back to the case of like a manifester. Okay. So let's say a manifester finds out they're a manifester and they see all these things. You're an initiator. You can do all this stuff. And they're like, but that doesn't seem to have worked out for me a lot of times. You know, a lot of times when I just try to do something, it wasn't the right time, or I wasn't the right person, or whatever, or it didn't work out the way I thought. Well, could be they are an emotional manifester, which is a tricky combination because they're meant to initiate, but they got to make sure it's the right time. So it's a delicate balance. The emotional manifester really has to pay extra special attention to how they're feeling and their connection and what's going on. And it is a more nuanced feeling, I would say, for emotional manifester to know when the time is right.
Yeah.
And in order to do that as well, they have to, because they're non-sacral, they would have to make sure that they are not pushing through all the time and they're taking care of themselves and they're getting appropriate rest when they need to in their down cycles, because then it will be easier for them to tap into that knowingness. Because a lot of times, if they're rested and they're paying attention, they most often won't get that urge to initiate if they're not ready for it. You know what I'm saying? Like, if they can protect their energy and make sure that they are taking care of themselves and everything else and honoring what they need, quite often then the timing will be right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another part where the whole authority, because remember, half of us are going to have emotional authority as our decision-making process. So it can be quite frustrating to respond to life, but then have to wait again. You wait for something to respond to, and then you gotta wait. Same for a manifesting generator. If they're emotional, they have to respond, then wait. Then when do I initiate? It takes some practice, some time of just like. And I don't, and I think it really is a reflection and looking back and getting really honest and thinking of times that helps you understand how to work with it now, because it's kind of hard to tell someone how to do it now. That usually I tell people to look back at their life and be like, there's got to be a time when this, worked out for you in a certain way. And they're like, yeah.
Hindsight is 2020.
So inner authority can be important. Not just with the emotional authority, but, like I said, some of the other authorities where it requires more interaction with others or how they make decisions. If they've been not doing it correctly their whole life, then it can, probably not resonate.
Yeah.
I mean, when I think about another example, of telling someone that they have to, I hope I say this right, so I'm going to bookmark it with some space. So in the case of a mental projector, let's say, so this is someone who has head and ajna defined, possibly throat to ajna, possibly, but no definition below the throat. So here's somebody that you could tell them that they're not supposed to make decisions with their mind. They're supposed to pay attention to the body and talk to other people about it, right? But this is someone who has spent most of their life in their own mind, because that is the consistent defined area in their design. That's the one thing they feel is consistent, reliable to them, is what their mind is telling them. So they may not want to hear that what they think is not always correct for them. None of us want to hear that, honestly. None of us want to hear that.
Because you're like, what?
Yeah. But then they may see again, if they reflect and go back, good decisions in life, bad decisions in life, how did it go? Well, there is a chance that maybe the better decisions, they possibly talk to people about it. And because that's how they help make decisions, is they talk, not to get advice, but just to, as a sounding board, to help, people, or help them hear themselves and what they're saying and what's actually going on in that mind. And then they can feel if that's right or not. So anyways, that was just a sidebar there, I think. Yeah. So really, a lot of this comes down to conditioning and what your experience has been up to this point in your life. And we I mean, that's the whole point of, in a way, the whole system is showing you where you have been picking up conditioning and what is you and what isn't you. So of course there's going to be some resistance at first. And if you haven't been doing a lot of inner probing of who you are, what you are, it might come as a shock to you, some of the things it says. And another thing I hear is, and I joke about this too, is generators that feel like projectors. They'll say, I say this all the time to my friend, because she's a very active, busy projector, and I don't feel that way. Like I said, a lot of generators feel like they don't have a lot of energy, and they feel like projectors. And it is quite possible, one, to be a generator who only has two centers, a sacral center connected to one other center. That would mean everything else is open. So there is quite possibly you would feel more like a projector, in the sense that the way they describe projectors is this, being aware of the other and not having so much, more other focus than selves. Because especially if they have an open G center and a generator, that's still going to be this identity and questioning piece of who they are. But with all that openness, they could possibly feel like projectors. And I think we already talked about it, but generators, when they are not using their sacral energy correctly, can certainly feel very burnt out, very tired. It can make it to the point where you don't feel like doing anything, getting out of bed. You're not engaged in life, because literally you're every day overriding your own sacral response, and it'll keep going. It has to, but it will just, I think, really suck the life out of you.
It's literally, it's trying to tell you, it's like, this is not what I want to do. Yeah. Listen to me.
And I understand it, because I am like I said, I am a generator with a completely open root and a completely open head. So I got the pressure sandwich there of always feeling pressured. And also on top of that, I have the 2946, the gate 29, which is really, well, they call it like perseverance, but it's like the gate that says yes. But it's only supposed to say yes to the right things. It's because it's a sacral gate. It's in response. It's supposed to be like, yes, I have the energy to commit. It's a gate of commitment. I can do this. But if you learn to override that all the time, you say yes to all the wrong things, and it happens. And I'm just talking about earlier in life too, like as a young mom, or, you start feeling like a lot of young moms can understand the pressure you feel to get involved in all the kids groups and church groups and service groups. It's like, oh, I can do it. If you're a generator, yeah, you can do it. You might hate every second of it, like I did, which is not every second of it, but I found pretty early, you guys were pretty young, maybe, I don't know, where I just decided that I was just, if I wasn't really committed to it, I didn't want to do it, because it wasn't a good use of my energy or anybody else's. And I didn't know any of this stuff back then, but I was just like, ugh, I don't want to do it. Lucky for me, that worked out for me. So that's just something also to consider. Another aspect could be the stage in life you're in and what your profile is, things like that. Especially that 6th line profile can sometimes be hard for people 4 line 6s to kind of suss out what that means, where they are in that stage of life, especially if you're, I know that you were like, so what? I don't do anything from 30 to 50.
I know. I was like, what is this up on the roof thing? I'm just, what do you mean? Yeah.
Bullshit.
And then I come off the roof. What do you mean?
I know.
What the hell is that?
I mean, I could imagine someone as a line 6 who's in their 20s, as you were, hearing this. It's even hard to deliver sometimes of like what that means, because there's going to be this initial resistance of like, what are you talking about? I'm just going to cash out for 20 years.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's not what it means. It means that you're just going to kind of relax a little bit and, build your life the way that, you'll see how others do it. You'll do it the way you want to do it. You'll maybe experiment a little bit more with how it's done, but there's not so much of a drive and an urgency to get it all done now, which I think in the first 28, 30 years of a line 6 feels more of this drive to get it figured out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there's certainly for you as a line 6, not so many, I want to say not so many. I've known other people who are older than you that are line 6s that say people have done readings for. They're like, oh yeah, my 20s were like, I lived here. I worked in, I know one girl was like, I was a Vegas showgirl. I did this, I did that. You know, I worked in all these different jobs, did all these different things. And like her life was like a whirlwind the first 28 years, not the first, but mainly those 20s, you know? And so and I know for you, you're always like, well, I don't feel like I've done a whole lot of this and that, but you have moved a lot.
We have moved a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that
you're
also
still figuring yourself out.
That wasn't me. That was like, I wasn't the initiator of that. It was mainly Pressy. I was just I was along the ride because I like to think I'm pretty easygoing for the most part. So I'm like, sure, let's do it. Why not?
Well, that's because you're open to it. That first, years of being more like the line 3 of experimenting. Well, let's see what happens. We can do that. Sure. Yeah. It doesn't mean you have to be the catalyst, but you certainly are willing to try things for sure.
Let's have this company. Let's have this company. Let's have this company.
I know. Let's try this. Okay. We'll give it a shot. If it works, it works. So sometimes different, the profile, I think a lot of people can resonate with the profile. I think the 6 is the more tricky one.
And the 5.
Yeah.
That one's hard to explain.
Yeah, it is. And another thing, as far as the chart and maybe not understanding why it doesn't fit with you, is that, and I think we'll do maybe down the road a whole episode about what they call conundrums in the chart, that there is in everybody's chart a conundrum. There is this built-in conflict in your own chart because life's a learning experience. And so you may be designed to, or feel the urge to be someone who initiates and does a lot of things, but you may have gates that are more responsive, or you might have emotional authority, things that you have to wait for, but a lot of your energy is about initiating individual gates and stuff. There's things like that. And so I think a lot of it, again, is what is the identity you have for yourself now as you first see human design and your design? What parts of it are you holding on to that is in conflict, or conflict's the right word, but in dissonance or whatever with what your design is showing you? And are you just holding on to an identity because it's there, or are you willing to look a little bit deeper and see that, there could be an easier way for you to do this? It just means that you have to change who you think you are, but you're not changing who you are. It's just stories you've told yourself about who you are and how you get things done in this world or whatever. So that's just my boiling it down synopsis of what I think. Thank you.
That was good. Yeah, that was good.
Of why it might not resonate with you. But most important, just make sure your information is correct first.
That's a good starting point.
Yeah. Just make sure that's right. So you can see there's lots of things here that really comes down to, and I know we didn't get too far into the the conditioning and the centers, because there's so much there. But what we always talk about is this, really the human journey is forgetting everything about who you are. The moment you're born, you forget everything. And then your life is about remembering. And so I think we're at a point in our evolution collectively that we've taken ourselves so far down the road, possibly the wrong direction, that it's like a lot of us need to remember quickly. And I think that's why human design has come through when it has. The time is right. The people are ready. And, here we are presented kind of like, here it is. This is what you are here to do. And there could be some resistance to that at first, because like I said, depending on your age, you could have spent a lot of years building a certain identity of who you are and how you do things that is then challenged. But I promise, if you give it some space and some time and a little honesty and reflection, you may find that there is quite a lot of truth there. And maybe later down your guard a little bit to say, this isn't all me. Now, all that being said, nothing to be forced here. So if still it doesn't resonate with you, you don't understand it, you don't get it, you don't want it, well, that's fine. Just drop it. I don't think that's anybody listening because they're here. I don't know that they get to this point. They're like, no, I really got to resonate with it. I think if you
no, that's it. I'm done.
Yes. Because it's not a belief system. It's not any kind of religious or spiritual dogma, any of that stuff. It's just like, take it or leave it. If it doesn't work for you, fine. But at least give it the opportunity to experiment a little bit with it. If you're at this point where you say, I just don't get it, I don't see it, maybe just decide to spend the next 3 to 4 weeks paying attention to it and thinking about it and following some of the suggestions out there of what your design says you should be doing. So
what's the harm?
Yeah. So what's the harm? So, all right. I think we've given enough to chew on for today. What do you think?
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
You wrapped it up nicely there.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So, I'll see you tomorrow when you bring your microphone and your laptop.
I'll bring my microphone.
And we'll maybe set up camp in the opposite ends of the house. And
we need a quiet house. Everyone leave.
Yeah. We'll just have to figure out when your dad's not here. Everybody else is pretty quiet. He's the noisy one.
Well, he does have the manifesting in him.
He's the manifesting generator, yeah. That's the thing. We never know where he's going to be or what he's going to be doing.
No.
We're laughing because the room I'm in now on the other side of this wall is another office in the house. And I had warned my husband that Haley and I were going to be recording. And he was in there trying to clean the room up. It's an office that's not been used really. And since you guys are coming tomorrow, Presley's going to be working from home here. He needs office space.
Yes.
And so he was listening to music and I said, I hate to, do that. And he's like, okay, no problem. He said, no problem. He honors the pod. And then we were sitting here recording and then there's this horrible noises coming from the other side of the wall. I didn't know what he was doing. He was over there using the dustbuster and cleaning up still. He just didn't realize. No, that's noisy too. He just went in a different direction and just kept going. And then, of course, I made the dogs bark and it was a whole thing.
You only had to knock on the wall once.
Yeah. But point being, we never know where he's going to be or what kind of noises he's going to be making.
No. You never know how long he's going to just keep walking through the house. You're like,
and we love him for it. Wouldn't have any other way.
Hey.
When I see him laying on the couch doing nothing, I'm like, what's wrong?
Are you okay?
Go do something. No,
he has a method to his madness.
Yeah, we love him for it. All right, so until next week, we thank you again for tuning in. And even, you know what? I just thought, do they tune in or they just push play? They're not tuning. It's not a radio. You're not tuning in. Thank you for pushing play.
For listening.
Oh, thank you for listening.
There it is.
We appreciate it. You may question it sometimes, but we appreciate it. When I mean question while you're listening, but we appreciate it. We entertain ourselves.
If you can't laugh about yourself, you're not doing it right. That's how I feel.
All right. Well, we definitely do that. All right. So definitely talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
You made it all the way to the end of today's episode, so you must have liked what you heard. If you did, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode, and perhaps leave us a good review. And if you know someone who wants to dig into all things human design with us, make sure you share the Human Design Hive podcast with them. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks for listening.